Welcome to LunarWhisper. I'll be your storyteller tonight, the voice you hear when the room gets too quiet. Before we begin, like this video and subscribe, so you never miss the things that follow you after midnight. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is. And if there's a story you want next, don't be shy. The shadows are listening. It happened 2 years ago, in the middle of the coldest winter I ever experienced. I was staying at my cousin's old cabin, far from the city. The place was quiet. Too quiet. At night, the only sound was the wind hitting the wooden walls like someone slowly knocking from outside. I came there to rest, but the first night already felt wrong. The temperature inside the cabin kept dropping, even though the heater was on full power. I could see my own breath forming in the air, like I was standing outside in the snow. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy, like boots sinking into fresh snow. I thought it was my cousin coming back, but when I checked through the window, no one was there. Just darkness and the frozen trees. I tried to ignore it, but then something even stranger happened. The footsteps didn't stop. They moved around the cabin. One circle, then another, like someone was walking around the house while watching me through every window. I turned off the lights and stayed still. I don't know why, but I felt like if I moved, whatever was outside would know exactly where I was. The footsteps stopped right behind the back door, and then I heard a whisper. It didn't sound angry. It didn't sound loud. It just sounded close. "Are you cold too?" I froze the moment I heard that whisper. It was soft, almost gentle, but I knew for sure no one should have been out there. The nearest neighbor was almost a kilometer away, and my cousin wouldn't return until the next morning. I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at the back door, waiting for something else to happen. Then the doorknob moved. Not fast. Not like someone trying to break in. Just a slow, deliberate turn. Like whoever was out there wanted me to hear it. I backed away and grabbed the small flashlight from the table. It was the only thing I had. My hands were already shaking, not because of the cold, but from how wrong everything felt. The doorknob stopped moving, and then the whisper came again. "Let me in. It's freezing." I forced myself to speak, even though my voice was shaking. "Who are you?" There was a long pause, the kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. Then it replied, still in that soft, cold voice. "You invited me. When you looked outside." My heart dropped. I didn't remember inviting anyone. I didn't even open the door. All I did was peek through the window earlier. The house suddenly made a cracking sound, like something heavy leaned against the wall. The floor vibrated just a little. Whatever was outside wasn't small. I turned off my flashlight and held my breath, hoping it would go away. Instead, something tapped on the window. Slow, steady taps, like knuckles on glass. Then the whisper came from the window, even closer. "I can see you. Don't hide." I didn't dare move. The tapping on the window was right beside me now, just inches from where I stood. I kept my eyes on the floor because I was terrified that if I looked up, I'd see something staring back at me. The tapping stopped. But then, the window began to creak. Very slowly, like someone was sliding their fingers across the glass. My breath felt stuck in my chest. The air around me was getting colder. Even the walls seemed to be freezing over. I wrapped my arms around myself, but it didn't help. Then, from the other side of the cabin, another sound, a soft, dragging noise, like something moving through thick snow, but getting closer. I realized with horror that the thing outside wasn't alone. There were two of them, both circling, both whispering at different corners of the cabin. One voice said, "Come outside." The other said, "We're waiting." My legs finally reacted. I backed toward the bedroom, keeping my eyes lowered. I wanted to run, but it felt like the cold air had weight pressing against me. As I reached the bedroom door, the lights in the cabin flickered. The heater made a choking sound. Then everything went dark. Complete darkness, the kind where you can't even see your own hand. In the dark, the whispers sounded different, closer, clearer, like they were inside the cabin now. "You shouldn't be alone. You called us. We're here with you." I grabbed my phone, trying to turn on the flashlight. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped it. When the flashlight finally turned on, the beam revealed something on the floor right in front of me. Snow. Not melted. Not wet. Just a small pile of fresh, perfect snow inside the house. The second pile of snow grew bigger, rising like something was taking form right in front of me. I felt the cold wrap around my legs first, then my chest, like invisible hands were testing the air around me. I stepped back slowly, keeping the flashlight pointed at the piles of snow. That's when I noticed something even worse. The snow wasn't just falling straight down. It was falling in the shape of footprints. One step, then another. Invisible feet pressing into the floorboards as if someone, or something, was walking toward me. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come out. The whisper came again, this time right beside my ear, warm enough that I could feel breath against my skin. "Don't be scared. You're not alone anymore." I stumbled back into the bedroom and slammed the door shut. My teeth were chattering. I pushed a chair against the door, even though I knew it wouldn't stop anything. Not something that could walk through walls of ice and leave footprints without a body. I kept the flashlight on, aiming it at every corner of the room. That's when I saw another thing that made my stomach drop. My breath didn't rise in front of me like normal. It drifted, sideways, as if something was breathing in the same space, pulling the air toward itself. And then the door handle started to move again. Slow, gentle, like before. But this time, it wasn't whispers that followed. It was knocking. Soft at first, then harder. The whole door shook. The chair I pushed against it scraped across the floor. I held the flashlight to the door, and as the knocking continued, I saw something appear on the wood. A handprint. Not a normal one. This handprint looked long, thin, frozen into the surface, like frost crawling from the outside to the inside. Then another handprint appeared beside it, and another, until it looked like several hands were pressing against the door, trying to get in. And through the noise, a single whisper slipped through the cracks. "Open the door. It's warmer in there." The door kept shaking harder and harder, until it felt like the whole cabin was breathing with it. The handprints on the wood were spreading, covering the surface like frozen veins. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, the room went completely dark. When the light came back, the knocking had stopped. Everything was silent. Too silent. I waited, holding my breath, hoping it was finally over. But then, a whisper came from inside the room. "We're already here." My heart dropped. I spun around with the flashlight, and the beam landed on the corner of the ceiling. Snow was falling from it. Not from a crack, not from a hole, just falling, like gravity didn't matter. And in the middle of that falling snow, something slowly took shape. A face, pale, frozen, Eyes black like deep winter nights, a mouth stretched into a smile that felt too cold to be human. I stumbled back until I hit the wall. My legs felt numb, like the cold was crawling through me. The figure in the corner spoke again, its voice echoing like the wind through a tunnel. You let us in the moment you looked into the dark. Behind it, more shapes formed, more faces, more smiling mouths, all drifting forward like they were floating in frozen air. I felt the cold grip my arms first, then my chest. It squeezed, not painful, but claiming, like winter itself was wrapping around me, dragging me into its breath. I dropped the flashlight. The room went dark again, but I could still see the shapes, not with my eyes, but with the cold touching my skin. One of them whispered right in front of me, "You won't freeze alone." The cold rushed into my lungs. I tried to scream, but all that came out was a cloud of white mist. My vision dimmed, turning the room into a blur of shadows and frost. The last thing I saw, or thought I saw, was my own reflection on the frozen window. But it wasn't moving like me. It was smiling back, wide, cold, and wrong. And then everything went white. Just white. Silent. Endless winter. Some people say they still find that old cabin frozen solid, even in summer. And if you look through the window when the sun sets, you might see someone inside, standing still, breathing sideways, watching, waiting for someone else to look outside, so they can come in too. The story starts on a freezing night in a small mountain town. The snow outside wasn't normal. Each snowflake felt heavier, like it carried something dark in it. People said this winter would be the coldest in years, but no one knew it would also be the scariest. I was staying at my cousin's cabin for a short break. The place was simple, quiet, and honestly, a little too far from other houses. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was how silent everything felt. Even the wind sounded tired, like it didn't want to move. That night, right after dinner, the lights suddenly flickered. Not once, but 3 times. Slow, like someone was playing with the switch. I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe the cold was affecting the electricity. But then I heard it. A soft knocking on the window. It wasn't loud, it wasn't fast. Just knock, knock, knock. Slow and steady, like someone wanted me to know they were there, but didn't want to scare me too fast. I walked to the window, trying to convince myself it was just a branch. But when I looked outside, I froze. There were footprints in the snow, leading straight to the window. But there were no footprints leaving, and whoever made them wasn't there anymore. At least that's what I wanted to believe. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe the snow covered the rest of the footprints. Maybe it was nothing. But the longer I stared out the window, the more I felt like someone was still standing there, watching me, even if I couldn't see them. I shut the curtain and locked every door in the cabin, even though I knew locks wouldn't help much if something really wanted to get in. The temperature dropped so fast that I could see my own breath inside the house. That never happened before. Then, the knocking started again. But this time, it came from the back door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Because I knew for sure there was nothing behind that door earlier when I checked. The knocks grew a little louder, just enough to let me know whoever, or whatever, it was, had patience. I slowly stepped closer, trying to listen. That's when I heard a sound that made my whole body turn cold. A voice, a whisper, coming from the other side of the door. It said my name, soft, shaky, like it was freezing. "Hey, open the door. It's me." But the problem was, It wasn't a voice I recognized. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe the snow covered the rest of the footprints. Maybe it was nothing. But the longer I stared out the window, the more I felt like someone was still standing there, watching me, even if I couldn't see them. I shut the curtain and locked every door in the cabin, even though I knew locks wouldn't help much if something really wanted to get in. The temperature dropped so fast that I could see my own breath inside the house. That never happened before. Then, the knocking started again. But this time, it came from the back door. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. I didn't breathe, because I knew for sure. There was nothing behind that door earlier when I checked. The knocks grew a little louder, just enough to let me know whoever, or whatever it was, had patience. I slowly stepped closer, trying to listen. That's when I heard a sound that made my whole body turn cold. A voice, a whisper, coming from the other side of the door. It said my name, soft, shaky, like it was freezing. Hey, open the door. It's me. But the problem was, it wasn't a voice I recognized. I slowly stepped back until I reached the center of the living room, trying to put space between me and every wall. The scratching stopped. The whispers stopped. For a second, the whole cabin went completely silent. Too silent. Then, thud. Something hit the roof. Not snow, not a branch. Something heavy. The ceiling dust fell onto the floor as whatever was up there walked, slowly, from one side of the roof to the other. The sound was so clear I could picture it. Long steps, dragging feet, like it wasn't used to walking on a roof but was trying anyway. I covered my mouth, afraid even breathing too loud would make it react. Suddenly, it stopped right above me. And then, something was knocking from the ceiling, like it knew I was standing right there. I ran to the bedroom and locked the door. The room was freezing. I hid behind the bed, trying to stay quiet. But the moment I sat down, I heard the bedroom window slowly slide open. I didn't open it. I didn't touch it. But it was opening, inch by inch, pushed by something I couldn't see. A cold wind rushed in, along with a soft voice. I found you. I froze in place, my back pressed against the bed frame. The window finished sliding up with a slow creak, like someone was purposely dragging the moment out. The cold air hit my face, and with it came a smell. Not snow, not winter, but something rotten. Something that shouldn't be out there. My breath shook. The room felt smaller. And then I saw it. 2 pale fingers, thin, stiff, and too long, curled over the bottom of the window frame. Then another hand. Then a head. But the head didn't rise like a normal person. It tilted, sliding into view sideways, like it didn't understand how the human body should move. Its skin was white like the snow, but cracked, as if it had been frozen for years. Its eyes, they weren't eyes, just dark, empty circles sinking deep into its skull. It smiled at me. Not a warm smile, a smile that stretched too wide, like its skin was tearing. A smile that looked proud it finally found me. "Cold, isn't it?" it whispered. But the voice, it wasn't just outside anymore. It whispered inside my head, too. I tried to crawl backward, but the creature slid into the room quietly, smoothly, like a shadow sliding off a wall. It didn't step. It glided across the floor, leaving behind tiny frozen marks with every move. My hands shook as I grabbed a lantern beside the bed. It was the only thing with fire. I lit it with trembling fingers. The creature stopped, staring at the flame like it was the only thing in the room it didn't control. For a second, I thought it feared it. I was wrong. It leaned forward, its face inches from mine. Its breath felt like ice burning my skin. "You can't hide from winter," it whispered. "Not this winter." And then, its mouth snapped open, wider than any human mouth could ever open. A screech tore through the room, shaking the walls and shattering the lantern glass. The flame burst up, bright and wild, catching the curtains on fire. The heat made the creature recoil, its skin cracking deeper, pieces falling off like frozen dust. It shrieked and tried to escape, but the fire spread fast, across the walls, the floor, everything. I didn't think. I just ran. Out the front door, into the storm, into the freezing night. Behind me, the cabin burned bright against the dark snow, and for 1 second, I thought I was safe, until I heard it. From deep within the flames, from the cracking wood, from the cold air behind me, a whisper, soft, calm, too close. Winter follows, and when I looked down, there were footprints in the snow beside mine, fresh ones, not made by me, walking right next to me, step for step, like something was still following, invisible now, but very much alive. Winter was supposed to be peaceful, quiet, beautiful. But that night, everything felt wrong from the moment I stepped outside. The wind wasn't just cold, it felt angry, like it was trying to push me back inside. Snow covered everything, and the street was so empty it looked like the world had stopped. I pulled my jacket tight and kept walking, thinking it was just a normal winter night. But then I heard it. At first it sounded like someone whispering my name. Very soft, very slow. I froze, looked around. Nobody. Just snow falling and the wind blowing through the trees. I tried to ignore it and kept walking, but the whisper came again, clearer this time, like it was right behind me. "Hey, don't go home!" I spun around fast. Nothing. Only my own breath in the freezing air. My heart started beating fast, but I told myself maybe it was the wind playing tricks. You know how winter nights can be, quiet enough to make your mind imagine things. But then I saw something that made my whole body feel numb. At the end of the street, under the dim streetlight, someone was standing, a tall figure, completely still, facing me. I blinked. The figure didn't move, didn't walk, didn't even breathe, just stood there, like it had been waiting for me. Snow kept falling around it, but somehow the ground under that figure stayed dark, like the snow refused to touch it. And then, it slowly lifted its arm and pointed straight at me. My legs suddenly felt weak. I didn't know if I should run or shout or pretend I didn't see it. But before I could even think, the whisper came again. Right next to my ear this time. "Run!" I didn't look back. I just ran. The cold air stabbed my lungs, but I didn't care. I sprinted down the street, slipping on the ice, almost falling. My only thought was to get away from that figure, whatever it was. When I finally reached my house, I fumbled with the keys because my hands were shaking so bad. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it twice. I leaned against the wall, gasping, trying to convince myself that maybe I imagined everything. But then I heard the crunch, snow, right outside my door. I held my breath and slowly walked to the small window beside the entrance. For a moment, the world outside looked normal, just snow falling quietly. Then I looked down at the ground. There were footprints leading straight to my front door, deep, heavy, like someone, or something, had followed me all the way home. But here's the part that made my stomach twist. I looked behind those footprints. There were none. No trail, no starting point. Just prints suddenly beginning a few steps away from my door, like the figure appeared out of nowhere. I stepped back from the window, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to grab my phone to call someone, anyone, but the screen was frozen, completely black, dead. That's when the tapping started, a slow, soft tapping on the window. I didn't want to look. Every part of me screamed not to look, but my eyes moved on their own, like I didn't have control anymore. There, through the thin layer of frost on the glass, I saw a hand, pale, too pale, pressing against the window from the outside, long fingers sliding slowly down the glass as if it was trying to draw something. My body locked up. I couldn't breathe. Then the whispers started again, louder this time, from every direction around the house. "Why did you run? Let us in. We're so cold." That's when I realized something truly terrifying. There wasn't just one figure anymore. There were several. And they all knew where I lived. The whispers surrounded my house like a swarm, soft, but full of hunger. Not human hunger, something colder. I stepped back from the window, but then I heard another sound. Not tapping this time, scratching. Something was dragging its nails along the wall outside, slowly, like it wanted me to know it was moving around, searching, choosing. Then, the lights in my house flickered once, twice, and went out. Everything became black. I stood frozen in the dark living room, my breath shaking. I could hear snow hitting the roof, and something else. Footsteps, heavy, slow footsteps, on the roof of my house. I looked up. The ceiling creaked, like someone was walking above me. Then they stopped right above my head. I didn't move. Couldn't move. The footsteps started again, this time faster, running from one side of the roof to the other, like they were excited, like they were playing. Suddenly, all the whispers stopped, all the scratching stopped. Total silence, and that silence was worse than any noise. Then I heard a voice, a deep, cold voice, coming from the back of the house. I found a way in. Every hair on my body stood up. I turned slowly, heart hitting my chest like a hammer. From the kitchen, I heard the door creak open. Very slowly, like someone was pushing it with one finger. I knew I had locked it. I knew I had. But it opened anyway. The cold air from outside rushed in, making the whole house feel like a freezer. I stared into the dark kitchen doorway, trying to see who or what was coming inside. At first, nothing moved. Then I saw the snow. Snow started sliding across my kitchen floor, forming a trail, like something invisible was walking through it. The shape in the snow, it looked like footsteps, but wider, wetter, like something was melting as it walked. Then the footsteps stopped, but the snow kept spreading, crawling toward me like it was alive. I stepped back until my heel hit the wall. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. And then, from the darkness of the kitchen, a face slowly appeared. Not walking, not stepping, sliding. A white, frozen face pressed into view, like it was being pushed forward by something behind it. Eyes black and hollow, skin cracked like ice, mouth frozen open, but somehow whispering, "You're warm. Let us share your warmth." Behind that face, more shadows piled up, more frozen faces, dozens, all trying to squeeze through my kitchen doorway. And they were getting in. The frozen faces kept sliding inside my kitchen, one after another. Their bodies didn't move like humans. They didn't walk. They glided, their limbs stiff, their joints cracking like breaking ice. Their whispers filled the house again, louder now, overlapping, echoing inside my skull. Warm, Warm. Warm. Give us your heat. You don't need it. We do. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. My legs felt like they were turning to ice, too. Every breath I took hurt, like needles stabbing my lungs. One of the frozen figures stepped closer, or slid closer, until it was just a meter away from me. Its skin was so pale, it was almost blue. Frost clung to its eyelashes. Its mouth stretched into an unnatural smile, wide and cracked. Then it tilted its head slowly, until it snapped to the side with a loud crack. Its voice wasn't a whisper this time. It spoke clearly and directly. You should have stayed out of the snow. The figure reached out its hand toward me. Its fingers were long, sharp, and covered in frost. When it touched my arm, just the tip of one finger, pain shot through me like electricity. My skin started to freeze. I screamed and yanked my arm back, but the skin where it touched had already turned white, hard, stiff. Frost spread across my sleeve like wildfire. They moved faster now, silent, hungry, closing in from all sides. The cold in the room became unbearable. My breath turned thick, white, and heavy. My eyelashes began to freeze together. My hands were turning numb. Then the one in front of me leaned close, its face just inches from mine. Its breath was so cold it felt like knives cutting my cheeks. Its voice was deeper now, not human at all. We are not people. We are what winter hides. Behind me, I heard glass breaking. A window, then another. More figures climbing in. Dozens, maybe hundreds. My whole house filled with the sound of ice cracking, bones shifting, snow falling where snow should never be. They surrounded me completely. One grabbed my shoulder, its hand like a block of ice, and I felt my muscles lock, freeze, go stiff. Another grabbed my wrist. Another touched my back. Cold spread through my body fast. My heartbeat slowed. My breathing became shallow. My vision began to blur, turning white around the edges. Then, through the freezing ringing in my ears, I heard one final whisper. You will join us when your warmth is gone. And the cold spread deeper, past my skin, past my bones, into my heart. Everything started turning white. The cold swallowed me whole. The frozen figures tightened their grip, pulling me into their circle. Their bodies pressed against mine, stiff, icy, unmoving, like being hugged by death itself. My vision flickered between white and black as their whispers crawled deeper into my mind. But then, something deep inside me pushed back. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the last bit of warmth I had left. I forced my eyes open. Through the blur, I saw their faces inches from mine, pale, cracked, hollow. Their jaws hung low, as if waiting to drink the last breath out of me. The leader, the first one I saw under the streetlight, stepped forward. It didn't walk. It didn't glide like the others. It rose from the snow, like the storm itself was lifting it. Snow swirled around its body, twisting into spirals, spinning faster and faster until it looked like a living blizzard wearing a human shape. The wind roared inside my house, blowing pictures off the walls, shattering plates, slamming doors. The whole world shook. Its voice thundered. Winter takes everything. The others responded in a chilling chorus. Everything. The storm creature raised its hand toward my face, and the cold was so sharp it felt like it was cutting through my soul. My heartbeat slowed to almost nothing. My knees buckled. My body started turning stiff. I could feel myself fading. Then something strange happened. My breath, the small bit of warmth left inside me, came out like a tiny cloud of steam. The creature stared at it. It leaned closer. It wanted it. It needed warmth to exist, and that gave me an idea. With the last strength in my shaking body, I took the deepest breath I could and screamed. Not out of fear, but to push every drop of warm air I had out into the room. A shock wave of heat blasted from my lungs, weak but real, and the frozen creatures shrieked. Their icy skin cracked, their bodies shook like glass under pressure. The leader roared with rage, its storm body exploding into swirling snow. But my scream kept pushing, louder, roar, burning my throat. The frozen ones collapsed, melting into puddles of dirty grey slush. The windows shattered outward. The storm was forced back, ripping away from my home like it was being dragged into another world. One by one, the figures dissolved into blowing snow, disappearing into the night. The wind stopped. The whispers stopped. The cold began to fade. I fell to the floor, gasping, trembling, my skin burning with returning warmth. For a long moment, the house was silent. Then, from outside, a soft, gentle snowfall began again. I crawled toward the window and looked out. The street was empty. No shadows, no figures, no footprints. Just winter night, quiet and still. But then, way down the street, under the same dim street light where I saw the first figure, snow began to gather, slowly rising, slowly forming into a shape, a tall, frozen shape. And in the wind, carried so softly I almost thought I imagined it, came one last whisper. Winter remembers. Winter was supposed to be peaceful that year. The kind of cold that makes people stay inside, drink something warm and sleep early. But for me, that winter felt different from the very first night. The air felt heavier, the sky looked darker, and the snow outside my window seemed wrong. I lived alone in a small cabin near the edge of a forest. Usually, I loved the quiet, but that night the silence felt too deep, like the world outside was holding its breath. I tried to ignore it and went on with my routine, but something kept pulling my attention toward the window. At first I thought it was my imagination, but then I noticed it. Footsteps in the snow leading toward my cabin. Not the kind of steps left by people passing by. These were slow, one by one, coming straight from the dark part of the forest. I told myself it could be a lost hiker or someone looking for help. But there was one thing that made my chest tighten. The footsteps stopped right in front of my door, and there were no footsteps going back. I stood there, staring at the door, feeling the cold creep into my back, even though I was inside. I didn't hear anything. No knock, no voice, nothing. Just the quiet winter night, holding something I couldn't see. And somehow, I knew. Whatever made those steps was still out there, waiting. I tried to calm myself by thinking it was just snow shifting, or maybe an animal wandering too close. But the truth kept bothering me. The steps were shaped exactly like human footprints, clear, deep, and too steady to be an animal. I grabbed a blanket and sat on the couch, trying not to look at the door. I didn't want to open it. I didn't even want to go near it. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more it felt like something was on the other side, standing in the cold, just inches away. Minutes passed slowly. My eyes grew heavy, but every time I started to drift off, I felt this strange pressure, like someone was watching me from the outside. The kind of feeling that crawls into your thoughts and refuses to leave. When the wind blew, the snow near the windows shifted a little, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow move. Not clearly, just a dark shape passing by. Too close, too slow. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind, playing tricks on my tired mind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That night didn't feel normal. The air, the silence, the steps, everything felt like a warning. Then, around midnight, something happened that made my whole body turn cold. My phone lit up on the table. Not from a message, not from a call. It lit up because the motion sensor camera outside the cabin had detected movement, and the preview showed a blurry figure standing right at my door. I sat frozen, gripping my phone so tight my fingers hurt. I didn't want to look at the window. I didn't want to confirm that someone, or something, was right beside me. The only light in the room came from my screen, and even that felt too bright, like it might reveal my presence. Slowly, I slid down from the couch to the floor, trying to stay quiet. I didn't know if the figure could hear me, but I didn't want to take any chances. My heart was beating too fast, and I was scared it might give me away. I forced myself to check the camera again. Maybe the figure had moved. Maybe it was gone. Maybe this nightmare was finally ending. But when the new picture loaded, my stomach dropped. The figure was still at the window. Closer. Its face was pressed toward the glass, but the image was too dark to see any details. Only a pale outline, a shape that shouldn't be there. I held my breath and listened. The room was so quiet, I could hear the faint sound of snow falling outside. I waited for anything. A voice, a step, a tap on the window. Something that could tell me what it wanted. But there was nothing. Then the cabin door made a small shift, just a light movement, like someone was slowly applying pressure from the outside. Not enough to open it. Just enough to let me know they were still there. I crawled toward the back room, trying not to make a sound. I needed to hide. I needed to put distance between myself and that window. But even as I moved, I couldn't shake the feeling that the figure knew exactly where I was, and it wasn't going to leave. I reached the back room and closed the door as quietly as I could. The darkness inside felt safer than the light. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. My hands were cold, not from the winter air, but from pure fear. For a moment, everything went silent again. Then my phone buzzed. Another camera alert. My throat tightened as I opened it. This time, the picture wasn't from the front door. It wasn't from the window. It was from the back camera, right outside the room I was hiding in. The figure stood just a few steps away from the door I had closed, still facing the room, as if it knew exactly where I had gone. My entire body started to shake. I didn't understand how it moved so fast. I didn't understand how it made no sound. I didn't understand how it found me in every corner of the cabin. I covered my mouth with my hand, trying not to breathe too loudly. Then the doorknob moved, not aggressively, not like someone trying to break in, but slow, careful, almost gentle, like whoever was outside wanted me to know that they didn't need force. They already knew they had me trapped. I backed up until I hit the opposite wall. My phone buzzed again, another alert. I didn't want to look, but I forced myself. The photo nearly made me drop the phone. The figure was inside the cabin, standing behind the back room door. I hadn't heard it enter. I hadn't heard the front door open. I hadn't heard anything at all. It was already here. My heart pounded so hard, I thought I might pass out. The doorknob turned a little more. The wood creaked. I couldn't run. I couldn't fight. All I could do was stare at that door and feel my fear rise higher than it ever had in my life. And just when the door began to open, only an inch, only enough for a sliver of darkness to appear, The cabin lights went out. Everything disappeared into pure, silent black. And in that darkness, I finally heard something. Not a sound from the figure. Not a step. Not a voice. I heard breathing. Right behind me. That winter night felt different. The snow outside didn't look normal. It was heavy, dark, and the wind sounded almost like a person crying. I was home alone, and the whole house felt cold, like someone had opened every window. Around midnight, I heard a sound from under the house. At first it was soft. I tried to ignore it. Maybe a tree branch, maybe the cold wood moving. But then the sound changed. It became slower, deeper, and hard to explain. It sounded like long nails dragging on the wood. I stood still. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. The sound didn't stop. It moved, slowly, under my feet, like something was crawling under the floor. Then I heard a voice. A quiet voice. A cold voice. "Let me in. It's freezing out here." I felt my whole body go cold. No one should be under my house. No one should be outside in that storm. But the voice kept going, now sounding upset. "I know you're there." The scratching got louder, faster, like it was moving toward my room. Then the voice whispered again, but this time it was right under me. "I can see you." The floor under my feet started to shake, like something was pushing from below, and then, bang! Something hit the floor from underneath so hard it almost lifted me off my feet. I stepped back, shaking, watching the wood rise like something was trying to break through. The voice growled, "Open the door!" After the shaking stopped, the house became completely silent. No movement. No voice. Nothing at all. The quiet made everything feel even more frightening. I walked slowly to my window and looked outside. Snow covered the whole yard, but right in the center, I saw something that made my heart drop. A figure, tall, thin, standing perfectly still in the middle of the snow. It looked like a person, but something about it was wrong. The head was slightly tilted, and the face looked pale, almost white. The eyes were dark, like empty holes staring straight at my room. I stepped away from the window, trying to calm my breath. That was when my phone buzzed. A message. No name, no number. It said, "Why did you leave me outside?" I felt my stomach twist. I didn't answer. I couldn't even think. Then another message came. "I'm near your house." I looked back outside. The figure in the yard was gone. My whole body went cold. I didn't know where it had moved to. Then I noticed something at the edge of the glass. A small shadow, right outside my window. My heart stopped as a pale face slowly appeared at the side of the window frame. The eyes were wide open, and it was smiling. A message came in again. "Let me inside. I'm cold." I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The face outside the window just kept smiling at me, waiting. The smiling face outside my window didn't move. It just stared at me with those dark, empty eyes, like it was trying to read my mind. I slowly stepped back, keeping my eyes on the window. But every time I moved, the face seemed to follow me, turning its head a little, like it didn't want to lose sight of me. Then, without warning, the face slid away from the window. Not down, not up, just to the side, like it was walking along the wall of the house. I felt my knees weaken. If it wasn't at the window anymore, where was it now? I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and tried to call my mum. No signal. Not even one bar. Then another message came through. Somehow. "I'm closer than you think." My breath caught in my throat. I looked at my bedroom door. The hallway light outside was still on. but something felt different. It felt like someone else was in the house. Very slowly, I walked to the door and opened it just a little. The hallway was empty, silent, still. Then I noticed something on the floor. Small, wet footprints, leading from the front door, straight toward my room. My heart pounded as I followed the footprints with my eyes. They stopped right in front of my bedroom door, right where I was standing just moments ago. I swallowed hard. Whoever, or whatever, made those footprints had already been standing outside my room. I closed the door gently and locked it. The moment the lock clicked, my phone vibrated again. A new message. "Why did you lock the door? I'm already inside." I froze. Then, from the dark corner of my room, I saw a tall shadow slowly stand up. The tall shadow in the corner didn't move at first. It just stood there, almost blending into the darkness. For a moment, I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. But then I saw it breathe, a slow rise and fall, like something waking up. I stepped back until my shoulders touched the wall. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't even hold my phone anymore. Then the shadow stepped forward. Its height was wrong. Its arms were too long. Its head tilted to one side, just like the figure in the snow. I wanted to run, but my legs felt frozen. It took another step, and I could finally see its face as it moved into the dim light of my room. It was the same pale face I saw outside the window, the same dark, empty eyes, the same unnatural smile. But now it was real. Now it was only a few steps away from me. It spoke in a low, soft voice. "You left me out there, in the cold." I shook my head, whispering that I didn't know who it was, that I had never seen it before. But it didn't listen. It reached out one long hand toward me, its fingers thin and stiff, like they had been frozen solid. "You walked past me," it said. "You didn't help." My chest tightened as I remembered something. A week earlier, during the first snowstorm, I was walking home when I saw someone lying near the old fence by the woods. I thought it was a mannequin or some winter decoration. So I didn't stop. I didn't check. I didn't know it was a person. The figure stepped even closer. Its voice broke like it was hurt. "You left me to freeze." I tried to move, tried to speak, but my whole body was locked with fear. The thing leaned its face inches from mine. Its skin looked stiff, grey, almost cracked from the cold. Then it whispered, "Now you can keep me company." Behind it, the temperature in the room dropped so fast I could see my breath turning white in the air. And the door behind me slowly began to open, even though I had locked it. The door behind me opened on its own, even though I knew I had locked it. Cold air spread into the room, so cold it hurt to breathe. The figure in front of me didn't turn around. It just smiled wider, like it had been waiting for this moment. I wanted to run, but when I tried to move, my legs felt heavy, like the cold had already started to grip them. The figure lifted its hand and pointed toward the door. "Come with me," it said. I shook my head over and over, but the cold air kept pulling at me, almost like invisible hands were trying to drag me forward. The figure stepped aside, letting me see through the open doorway. The hallway lights were off now. Everything was dark, except for one thing. A long trail of melted snow on the floor, leading away from my room, toward the front door, like someone had walked through the house, dripping winter behind them. The figure whispered again, "I waited for you. Now you will wait with me." Suddenly, the cold rushed around my body, squeezing my chest so tight I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, and the walls around me started to look white, like everything was turning into snow. The figure's face came close to mine, those empty eyes staring right into me. "No one heard me when I called for help," it said. "No one will hear you either." My hands turned numb. My skin felt like ice. The room faded to white. The last thing I saw was the figure holding out its hand, waiting for me to take it. And then, nothing. The next morning, my parents came home. My room was empty. The window was open. Snow covered the floor, and outside, in the yard, there were 2 sets of footprints. Only one set came back. I still remember that winter as the coldest one of my life. The kind of cold that makes the air feel heavier, like something unseen is watching you from the dark. I had just arrived at my uncle's old cabin in the mountains. He told me I could stay there for a few days to clear my mind, but the moment I stepped inside, I felt something was wrong. The cabin was quiet, too quiet. The furniture was still there, the fireplace was clean, and the lights worked fine. But the air felt strange, like the place had been waiting for someone. I tried to ignore it, and told myself it was just the weather playing tricks on me. But as the evening came, the cold outside started to creep into the room. No matter how many layers I wore, I couldn't get warm. I walked to the window to check the snow. That's when I noticed something unusual. There were footprints in the snow, leading straight toward the cabin door. But what bothered me wasn't that someone had walked up to the house. It was that there were no footprints going back. Someone came, but no one left. I stood there, staring at the snow, trying to understand. Then I realized something else. Those footprints were fresh. They couldn't be more than an hour old, and I hadn't heard anything outside. My heart felt heavy. I slowly stepped back from the window. The cabin suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I tried to calm myself, but the thought kept repeating in my head. Someone came here, and they might still be inside. I forced myself to stay calm as I looked around the cabin. It wasn't big, just one main room, a small kitchen, and a narrow hallway leading to the bedroom and bathroom. If someone was inside, there weren't many places for them to hide. I took a slow breath and walked toward the hallway. The light switch didn't work. The entire hallway was dark, as if the bulb had died at the exact moment I needed it. I felt a cold wave run through me. I knew I had turned on every light when I arrived. I used my phone's flashlight and pointed it down the hallway. The light showed the old wooden floor, the bedroom door slightly open, and the bathroom door shut. I didn't want to check either one, but the silence in the cabin made it impossible to ignore. I stepped forward. My phone light shook a little in my hand. When I reached the bedroom door, I pushed it open slowly with my foot. The room was empty. Just an unmade bed, a small table, and a window covered with frozen patterns. But something felt off. The window wasn't like that earlier. The frost formed shapes that almost looked like fingers dragging downward, as if someone had been watching from outside, or trying to get in. I swallowed hard and backed out of the room. The bedroom was clear. That left only one place: the bathroom. The door was still closed. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling the cold air growing heavier around me. I placed my hand on the doorknob. It felt colder than anything else in the cabin. I twisted it slowly. Before I opened the door, I paused. A strange thought came to me. If there really was someone inside the bathroom, how long had they been hiding there? And were they hiding from me? Or were they waiting for me? I pushed the bathroom door open, expecting the worst. The light flickered as it turned on, but the room looked empty. The mirror was fogged, even though there was no heat or steam. The shower curtain was closed, and that was the one thing I didn't want to touch. I stood there, staring at it. The curtain wasn't moving, but I felt like if I pulled it aside, something would be there, standing still, waiting. My hand shook as I reached for it. I told myself I had to check. If I didn't, I would never sleep that night. I pulled the curtain open in one quick motion. The shower was empty. I let out a breath, but my chest still felt tight. Something didn't make sense. The footprints outside, the cold inside the cabin, the frozen window in the bedroom, the fogged mirror. It all pointed to someone being there. But where were they? I stepped out of the bathroom and looked around the cabin again. That's when I noticed another detail. Something small but impossible to ignore. The front door was unlocked. I was sure I had locked it when I arrived. I always lock doors, especially in a place far from town. I walked to the door and checked it again. The lock was open, and the metal felt strangely cold, like someone had touched it not long ago. My heart started to beat faster. I looked around the room again, slowly, trying to understand what was happening. That's when I noticed something new on the floor. It was a trail of melted snow, starting right in the middle of the living room. Not from the door, not from my shoes, but from a spot near the hallway. Someone had been standing there. Someone had been watching me while I searched the cabin, and they were silent the entire time. My breath turned shallow as I followed the thin trail of melted snow across the wooden floor. It stopped near the corner of the living room, right beside an old cabinet my uncle used to keep tools in. The cabinet door was slightly open, just enough to make me feel like something had moved it recently. I walked closer, but every step felt heavier. The cold in the room was getting worse, almost like the temperature was dropping on purpose. I could see my own breath now, floating in front of me. I stopped a few steps away from the cabinet. It was tall, old, and big enough for someone to hide inside. I reached out and touched the door. It felt like ice. For a moment, I stood there trying to find the courage to open it. My mind kept repeating the same thought. If someone really hid in there, then they had been close to me the whole time, closer than I ever imagined. I slowly pulled the cabinet door open. Inside, there were only tools, rusty pliers, a hammer, a few nails scattered at the bottom. No one was there. But something caught my eye. A set of fingerprints on the inside wall of the cabinet. They looked fresh, as if someone had pressed their hand there not long ago. I stepped back, my heart thudding harder. Someone had definitely been inside, but they were no longer there. I tried to think. If they weren't in the bedroom, not in the bathroom, not in the cabinet, where else could they be? That's when I noticed the attic door, a small square opening in the ceiling with a pull-down ladder. I had ignored it earlier, but now it felt like the only place left. The attic door was slightly open, just an inch, barely noticeable. I stared at it, feeling a deep chill run down my spine. If someone had climbed up there, they were still above me. Right now. I stood under the attic door, staring at the small gap. The air around me felt heavier, colder, almost pressing against my skin. I reached up and pulled the ladder down slowly. It creaked, not loudly, but enough to make my stomach twist. I raised my phone, pointing the light into the opening above me. The attic looked empty at first, just wooden beams, old boxes, and dust floating in the cold air. But something felt wrong. The silence wasn't normal. It felt like someone was holding their breath, waiting for me to climb up. I took a deep breath and went up the ladder, one step at a time. When my head rose above the edge of the attic floor, I swept the light around again. Then I saw it. In the far corner, behind an old trunk, there were footprints in the dust. Not old ones, fresh ones. They led behind the trunk, but they didn't come back out. Whoever made them was still there. I felt my chest tighten, but I forced myself to move. I stepped onto the attic floor. My footsteps were soft, but the cold grew sharper with every step I took. When I reached the trunk, I stopped. My hand felt numb as I pushed it aside. Behind it was a small space, just enough for a person to hide. But no one was there now. The footprints ended in that exact spot, as if the person had vanished into the air. I stared, confused and terrified. Then I felt something behind me. Not a touch, not a sound, just presence, like someone was standing right at my back. I turned slowly. Nothing was there, but the attic door behind me was closing on its own. I ran for the ladder, grabbed it, and hurried back down as the door snapped shut above me. I stumbled into the living room, breathing hard. The cold around me felt alive now, like it was following me, surrounding me. That's when I noticed the front door. It was wide open. Snow blew into the cabin, and in the snow outside, I saw a new set of footprints. They started at the door and moved away into the trees. But what froze me completely was this. There were two sets, one normal, and one much larger. And the larger ones stopped right at the doorway, as if something huge had been standing there, watching me the whole time. I stepped back, my heart pounding, realizing one final truth. In that cabin, I was never alone, and whatever had visited me that night wasn't human.